We are in Turin, in the splendid setting of the 2026 book fair, Salone del Libro, in the Oval Pavilion. Today we present a new essay by Stefano Verani, published in Italy as a book by the Luxco Publishing House, which we thank, with the title Archeoengineering, meaning engineering to reveal the mysteries of the past. Presenting the author, Stefano Verani. Archeoengineering is the discipline that applies scientific engineering criteria to the study of artifacts, archaeological excavation, and ancient text. The ultimate goal is to reconstruct our most remote past, deepening our knowledge of it, and to push back the barrier of our temporal knowledge. In the book, I illustrate this discipline with some practical examples. This is how I was able to write as many as 2 books set in prehistory, where every event stems from a study of archeoengineering. But let's see what our temporal barrier is and how far our knowledge of the past extends. This graph schematically represents, according to common historiography, the adventure of our species Homo sapiens. On the x-axis is the passing of time. On the y-axis is the development of knowledge. Homo sapiens was born about 300,000 years ago. Commonly widespread historical texts tell us that for hundreds of thousands of years, Homo remained at the level of minimal knowledge and activities. Hunting, living in rock crevices, building basic shelters, he was, in fact, an animal slightly superior to a beaver, nothing more. Then, after 290,000 identical years, suddenly, and in a very short time, the technologies and the knowledge that are the basis of our civilization developed. Agriculture, metalworking, animal husbandry, pottery production, urban planning, hydraulics, writing. We noticed that the speed and the concentration of events are surprising and inconsistent with the preceding past. In the graph, 2 important events are highlighted with 2 vertical lines. The first line indicates the transition from the Pleistocene to the Holocene, from what is commonly called the Ice Age to the current age. According to geologists, it was not a smooth transition, but rather a global catastrophe that changed climate, fauna, and flora in a rapid and lethal manner. The second line indicates the invention of writing in Ur, Mesopotamia by the Sumerians. This date is very important because, as conventional history is linked to the availability of written text, only here does prehistory end and history begin. If we then move to America, writing arrives at the end of 1400 AD, and therefore only then does prehistory end. We quickly realize that this is a huge limitation. In fact, if we plot the passage of time on a clock graph and indicate history and prehistory with 2 different colors, we notice the enormous disproportion between the two. 99% of the presence of Homo sapiens on Earth is prehistory, and only 1% is history. Clearly, this limit is huge, and the work of archaeoengineering is to push back this barrier to find out more about our remote past. What did man do all this time? Is it possible that he did not develop civilizations? Or do previous civilizations exist of which we have lost memory? What evidence do we have? The transition from the Pleistocene to the Holocene is important. This very violent event led to a drastic reduction of animals on Earth. In particular, the complete extinction of many species of large animals, the so-called megafauna, and the drastic reduction of the human population. Did this event perhaps erase the memory of previous civilizations? But how can we study a long period prior to the birth of writing? This is where the archeoengineering comes into play. It is appropriate that I briefly introduce myself. My name is Stefano Verani, and I studied ancient and modern languages and mechanical engineering, with particular reference to mechanical processing technology. For many years, I have analyzed myths, sacred texts, archaeological sites, and ancient artifacts. I have made numerous trips and field researches in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. In particular, I applied a special technique called reverse engineering. That is, by studying an object or a building, the skills that were necessary to create it are reconstructed. In several cases, I found no correspondence between the artifacts and the technological knowledge of the population that should have created them. We are talking about artifacts attributed to ancient population from the Bronze Age or earlier. Observing them with engineering criteria, however, one discovers that to create these artifacts, skills were necessary that were not present in the population to whom they were erroneously attributed. Sometimes there are skills that we ourselves have not yet achieved. These ancient people explain these achievements by attributing them to giants, wizards, or dwarfs with extraordinary powers. They tell of enormous stones made to fly with the sound of whistles. As an engineer, I cannot believe in magic as an explanation, and I stick to the facts. These anomalies rather suggest that civilizations more ancient than those we are told about existed, but of which we have lost knowledge. These anomalies can be grouped as follows: processing of very hard stones, moving of enormous weights, use of electricity. Let's start precisely with this last point, namely the use of electricity. According to the history of science, the first device for accumulating electrical charges was invented in 1746 in Holland by Peter von Mussenberg and took the name of Leyden jar, and it is an electric capacitor. A capacitor is a device that allows the accumulation of electrical charges in quantity and their use for various purposes. Its creation requires knowledge of electricity and the characteristic of different materials. In this historical case, it involves the insulating glass container lined on the outside and inside with a copper, a conducting material. The two linings are separated by the glass, and it is possible to accumulate electrical charges. The larger the capacitor, the greater the charge. The first capacitor made was a bottle, but over time we have made larger and more capacious ones. A charged capacitor is a dangerous object because it can fatally electrocute anyone who touches it. It can also ionize the surrounding air, creating a luminescence effect and creating flashes of electrical discharge. In particular, if we use the lens of archeoengineering, we find in an ancient literature a glaring proof of the knowledge of electricity and the capacitor. The text I am referring to is the Bible, and the device is the Ark of the Covenant. In the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant becomes a terrifying symbol of God. Aaron's two sons approach it and die electrocuted, struck by lightning. A bearer dies upon touching it. Friends and enemies fear it. At certain times, the Ark emanates an aura of light. Over the millennia, this device has been shrouded in a magical aura and has been attributed supernatural characteristic. In reality, everything is well explained by an archeoengineer. During Exodus, set 2700 years before the Leyden jar, the Lord of the Bible gives Moses extremely precise instructions in terms of materials and dimensions to build the Ark of the Covenant. If we do so, we realize that the Ark is a powerful electrical capacitor. Gold instead of copper and Egyptian acacia wood instead of glass, but the function is the same. It is in fact an insulating wood container lined internally and externally with gold, a conducting metal. The two linings do not touch, making it possible to accumulate large electrical charges. Long poles made of insulating wood were used to transport it. The Ark of the Covenant was a dangerous object that, on multiple occasions, fatally electrocutes anyone who touches it. It is also described as ionizing the surrounding air, creating a luminescence effect and creating flashes. Here we see the two capacitors in parallel. This means that during the period of Exodus, 3000 years before Laden, certain priests knew about electricity. But from which previous civilization did this knowledge come? In the book, I illustrate how to build the Ark of the Covenant at home using easily available materials. The message is that history is different from the one that we tell ourselves. At the time of Exodus, meaning around 1200 BC, they were already capable of accumulating electricity. Right, but what did they do with it? Do we have proof of use? Yes. Probable use was illumination, meaning the lighting of ionizing lamps. Then, why don't we find electrical circuits made of copper, you might ask? Because it was not necessary. You can light lamps without wires, simply by creating an electromagnetic field, just as I am doing now by bringing this neon lamp close to an electromagnetic field. But do we have any trace in the past of such a use? Yes, there are descriptions in the sacred books. For example, the god Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity of Zoroastrians, gives men lamps that light up by holding them in their hands, so that they can dig themselves an underground shelter to save them from the deluge. Another example, in the ancient temple of Dendera in Egypt, ionizing lamps are depicted with hieroglyphic writing warning to pay attention to the danger of contact. In this image, we see Egyptian bas-relief of ancient electrical capacitors. In this other image, we compare modern electrical insulators with ancient Egyptian jade pillars. Do you see how much they resemble each other? And who created the electricity, you might ask? In the early 1900s, the brilliant scientist Nikola Tesla designed a device capable of extracting electrical charges from the Earth, accumulating them and projecting them into the ionosphere, making them available to humans without the need for transmitting cables. The project culminated in what we remember as the Tesla Tower, but it was boycotted and definitely closed by the financier J.P. Morgan, who had instead invested in the production of electrical cables. Well, the eye of the archeoengineer recognizes the characteristic in the pyramids of Giza that are akin to the Tesla Tower. The pyramids of Giza were therefore electrical machines capable of drawing energy from the earth, creating electricity in enormous quantities. Going into detail, the source of this energy was both the rhythmic pulsation of the earth and the flow of the underground Nile waters right beneath the pyramids. Who built such technical wonders? Certainly not the pharaohs Khufu, Cheops, and Menkaure, Mycerinus. In their time, the pyramids were already inactive, and the pharaohs limited themselves to copying their shapes, building smaller and inactive pyramids. Following Tesla concepts, but thousands of years earlier, the pyramids saturated themselves with energy, projecting it into the ionosphere, making it available to be discharged through the use of appropriate antennas, which were called obelisks. It is no coincidence that the tip of the obelisk and pyramids was made of an alloy of gold and silver, highly conductive materials called electron. Another highly significant aspect is the presence of ancient artifacts made from extremely hard stones, so hard that they could not be worked even with steel. These have been erroneously attributed to civilizations that only knew copper or bronze, while they actually come from other, technological more advanced civilizations of which all trace have been lost. Let's look into the details. This scale shows the relative hardness of several common materials. Stones of sedimentary or organic origin, such as sandstones and marble, can be worked quite easily with the use of bronze tools. A few stones of volcanic origin instead, such as porphyry, basalt, granite, andesite, or diorite, are extremely hard and brittle. They cannot be worked with bronze tools, nor even with iron tools. In fact, they are harder than iron. The hardest is diamond, and indeed today they are worked with alloyed steel tools coated with diamond dust. At the same time, these stones are very brittle. If they are hit with hammer blows, they break. In my hand, I have a cube of porphyry and a steel nail, which is much harder than iron, being alloyed with other elements. Well, no matter how much you scratch it, it will be the steel that wears out against the porphyry. On the other hand, sculpting porphyry with another piece of porphyry is an arduous task, because both break without any precise logic. For this reason, these stones are preferred for making flooring, cutting boards, or kitchen countertops. Today, on the other hand, we are unable to make porphyry or granite statues with complex shapes precisely because of their brittleness. It is a pity, because the great hardness would grant the statues a long durability. Strangely, dynastic Egypt and the Sumerian civilization are instead rich in statues made precisely with these very hard materials, even in diorite, which is harder than porphyry and granite. These are diorite vases found in Egypt and dated 3200 BC. Observe the elongated shapes, incredible for this hardness of material. These are vases in mineral quartz. It is a very brittle and hard material. There is no way to work them this way today. Other diorite vases found in Egypt and dated 3500 BC, so thin as to be transparent. Observe the perfection of the shape and the complete hollowing out of the vase. The hollowing out of the vase is a very important fact. It is not understood how they managed to work it like this, taking into account the hardness and brittleness of the material. Today we will not know how to do it. In fact, we are capable of making cylindrical holes, but not processing that is so angled and so delicate. Furthermore, the base is spherical, with an almost point-like support. To remain vertical, perfect manufacturing symmetry is required, which is very ambitious to achieve with manual processing. This object is known as the Sabu Disk. It was found in a tomb in Saqqara and is exhibited today at the Cairo Museum. It is an incredible object. It looks like if it is made of clay, whereas it was instead made from a single block of hard and brittle slate. It presents a complex shape with three curved lobes veins that meet in the center, and it resembles modern objects such as wheels or propellers. This is a diorite bowl found in Egypt and attributed to 3000 BC, which presents a truly incredible shape. It is not understood how it was worked, because the resulting thickness is only 2 mm thin, and it would have easily broken if a tool had been used. Freeing from imagination, it looks as if it were obtained by folding inward a sheet of very thin diorite, only 2 mm thick, a processing technique impossible for us and certainly for the area of attribution. This slide shows the statue of Khafre, a masterpiece of beauty, symmetry, and precision of details. The most impressive workmanship is behind the statue. In fact, there is a falcon, Horus, protecting the back of Khafre's neck. To create a bas-relief of the falcon's tail, the sculptor had to remove an entire wall of diorite, a massive work that he could afford to do only because he evidently possessed a powerful technology to easily work this very hard material. Another technical aspect that arouses interest is the moving of enormous weights. In fact, we find a discrepancy between the weight of the creation and the lifting technology known at the time to which they were attributed. An average man can easily lift 20 kilos. A strong man can lift 40 kilos. It follows that to lift 1 ton, at least 25 men are needed. Therefore, to lift and move great weights, mechanical tools such as hoists or cranes are used. The most capable crane built by the Romans whom we consider the best engineers of antiquity, was capable of lifting only 100 tons and was not even able to move around. In ancient archaeology, however, we found evidence of boulders weighing hundreds of tons, moved over many kilometers. In this slide, we see the Colossi of Memnon, that are two enormous stone statues. They reach a height of 15 meters, without counting the supporting base, and a weight of 700 tons each, and they were transported for 650 kilometers. They have been attributed to the pre-dynastic Egypt, but we have no record of this civilization having the technology to manufacture and move these weights. This slide shows the megaliths of Baalbek. In Baalbek, Lebanon, someone flattened the peak of a mountain and created a plaza with monoliths of 800, 900, and 1,000 tons. It has been attributed to the Romans, but the Romans did not have the technology to transport these megaliths. These images show the immense area of Sacsayhuaman in Cuzco, Peru. The top of the mountain was perfectly flattened, and 3 overlapping zigzag walls were built using heavy granite blocks weighing up to 200 tons. These constructions are attributed to the Incas, but it is patently incorrect. The Incas did not have tools to work granite and did not know how to move weights of this magnitude. In fact, the Inca walls made with small stones are superimposed on the pre-existing walls. This is Italy, the megalithic walls of Alatri, with blocks up to 100 tons. None of the civilizations to which these artifacts have been attributed possessed the technology to create them. Who carried out these works and when? Did a previous civilization with these skills exist? The topics covered so far are developed in greater detail in the book Archeoengineering. The volume features many unpublished photographs and practical demonstrations to do at home. Other chapters of the book, Archeoengineering, present the following studies: the geographical location of Atlantis, the dating of the pyramids of Giza, archeoengineering of the Garden of Adam and Eve. The results of these archeoengineering studies have allowed me to reconstruct a possible path of human civilization, which I have recounted in 2 prehistoric novels, Deus I, The Age of Gold, and Deus II, Men and Gods at War, published by Cavinato International, with whom I thank for publishing them. All these books are available at Amazon.com. Finally, I thank Francesca Bittarello, owner of Fluxco Edition, who published the essay Archeoengineering in Italian, and for giving me the space for this presentation. Archeoengineering is available on many online stores, including Amazon. Thank you for the attention and have a nice day.